Before we dive in, just a quick but really important heads up. This video is designed to explain a key FDA guidance document, but it is absolutely not a replacement for reading the full document yourself.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Evidence Mastery. My name is Dr. Masoud Tusi.
Today, we're going to unpack a document that is truly changing the game for how medical devices are evaluated. We're doing an explainer on the FDA's guidance, use of real-world evidence for medical devices.
So this is it. What you're looking at is the cover of the actual guidance document that will be our guide today. It's issued by the FDA, and it's a big deal because it supersedes the older 2017 version. This document really captures the agency's most up-to-date thinking on what is a transformative area in regulatory science. So if you're in the medical device world, you really need to understand what's in here.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the introduction and scope to get our bearings. Then, we'll walk through the absolute core of the FDA's framework. First, we'll talk about assessing data relevance, and then data reliability. Once we have that foundation, we'll get into the specifics of study design and wrap up with the practical side of things, how to document your submission for the FDA. This structure really mirrors how the agency wants you to think about and build your case.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Introduction and Scope. This is where the FDA really sets the stage, defining the key concepts that the entire guidance is built upon.
First things first, what are we even talking about when we say real-world data, or RWD? Well, the FDA has a specific definition. It's data about a patient's health or their healthcare that's routinely collected. This is the key. We're not talking about data from a pristine, controlled clinical trial. We're talking about the data that's being generated every single day in places like electronic health records, medical claims databases, patient registries, and, more and more from wearables and other digital health technologies.
So, if RWD is the raw ingredient, what's the final dish? That's real-world evidence, or RWE. This is the clinical evidence about a product, its usage, its benefits, its risks, that you get from actually analyzing all that RWD. It's the critical step of turning that sometimes messy, raw, real-world data into powerful insights that can actually support a regulatory decision.
And this is where it gets really exciting. The power of RWE lies in just how versatile it is. As the guidance points out, you can use it across the device's entire life cycle. For instance, you could use RWE to build a control group for a clinical study, which is a huge deal. Or you could use it to support a new indication for a device that's already on the market. It can help set performance benchmarks, and it's absolutely essential for post-market surveillance. It's an incredibly powerful and flexible tool.
Now that we know what RWE is, we get to the first of two huge pillars in the FDA's framework, assessing data relevance. And the big question here is actually very simple, but incredibly profound. Is the data you have truly fit for purpose for the specific regulatory question you're trying to answer?
The guidance breaks relevance down into 4 key questions you have to ask. First, availability. Do you actually have the detailed data points you need on the device, the patient outcomes, and other important variables? Second, linkages. A lot of times we're pulling data from different places. Can you connect them together accurately? Third is timeliness. Is the data recent enough to reflect how medicine is practiced today? And finally, a really important one, generalizability. Does the data you have actually represent the patient population in the US that you want to use this device for?
Okay, so let's say you've established your data is relevant. You've checked that box. What's next? Well, we move to the second pillar, assessing data reliability. Here, the question changes from is it the right data to a more fundamental one. Can we actually trust this data? This is all about the quality and integrity of your data.
Reliability really boils down to 2 main things you have to demonstrate to the FDA. First is data accrual. You need to show exactly how the data was collected and managed with clear data dictionaries and consistent methods. The second piece is data quality and integrity. This is where you prove you have solid quality control systems in place. You're checking for things like completeness and accuracy, and you're keeping clear audit trails, so you can trace every piece of data from its source all the way to your final analysis.
So, we've now confirmed our data is both relevant and reliable. We have our high-quality ingredients. Now it's time to actually design the study. This brings us to Section 4, Study Design Considerations. This part is all about the specific methods you'll use to turn that high-quality data into valid, scientific evidence. This slide does a fantastic job of showing the fundamental shift in thinking here. Up top, you see that familiar timeline from a traditional clinical study. It's very linear, very structured, but look below it. The RWD study timeline is much more dynamic. It reflects how data is continuously collected as part of routine clinical care. It's a completely different way of thinking about how we generate evidence.
Let's zoom in on that RWD timeline because it is so important. You'll see this index date. That's the key event, like when a patient receives a device. But what's really critical is that we have this look-back window before that date. That's where we look at the patient's history to establish their baseline characteristics and apply our study criteria. Then, after the index date, we have the follow-up period where we look for outcomes. Defining these time periods with precision is absolutely essential for a strong study.
So, with all this messy, real-world data, how on earth do you handle the complexity of all these different variables? Well, the guidance highlights some really powerful tools, like this one, a directed acyclic graph, or a DAG. Now, this might look like a simple flowchart, but it's much more. It's a rigorous map of the causal relationships you assume are at play. For example, you can see how a confounder might affect both the choice of device and the patient's outcome, which would create bias. Using a DAG forces you to think about these potential biases up front and create a solid statistical plan to deal with them.
All right, we're on the home stretch. We arrive at the final practical output of all this hard work. Section 5, documentation for FDA submission. You've done the science, you've generated the evidence. Now, how do you package it all up and present it clearly to the agency?
The good news is the guidance gives us a very clear checklist. It starts with your cover letter, where you need to be upfront and clearly state that you're using RWE. Next, and this is so important, is the protocol. Your protocol, which details your entire study design and analysis plan, must be finalized before you start analyzing the outcome data. This is crucial for preventing bias. After that comes the full report with your results and that comprehensive assessment of relevance and reliability we talked about. And finally, you'll include any other necessary info, like IRB documentation.
And there you have it. That really covers the core framework. As we've walked through, a successful RWE submission really rests on those key pillars: demonstrating data relevance, ensuring absolute reliability, using a rigorous study design, and then presenting it all with transparent and complete documentation.
Now, I have to say this one more time because it's so important. This explainer is meant to be a helpful guide, but for any regulatory submission, the full official guidance document from the FDA is the one and only authoritative source you should be using.
And for those of you who really want to get into the nuts and bolts, the how-to of designing and conducting these kinds of robust studies, I'd recommend the book Real-World Evidence: Principles in Practice, which gets into all the practical details. Thank you so much for joining me for this breakdown today. If you found this helpful, please go ahead and subscribe to Evidence Mastery for more deep dives like this one. I absolutely welcome your questions in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Just please note that I can't address any personal medical questions. We'll see you next time.